The morning sun cast a golden glow over Kensington Palace as Prince William stood before the tall mirror in his private chambers. His navy blue ceremonial uniform hung perfectly on his frame, each medal and decoration catching the light. Today was no ordinary day. Today his father would become King Charles III, and the weight of history pressed upon his shoulders like never before. In the adjoining room, Princess Kate sat at her vanity table while her stylist made final adjustments to her elegant Alexander McQueen coat dress. The soft cream fabric complemented her natural beauty, and the delicate silver embroidery told stories of British heritage. She had chosen this particular shade carefully, knowing that every detail of their appearance would be scrutinized by millions of viewers around the world. The children's voices echoed through the hallways as Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis were being prepared by their nannies. George, now old enough to understand the significance of the day, practiced his posture in front of a small mirror. His miniature morning coat made him look remarkably grown up for his young age. Charlotte twirled in her ivory dress, delighted by how the fabric moved around her legs, while Louis fidgeted with his collar, still too young to fully grasp why everyone seemed so serious. William walked to the window and gazed out at the gathering, crowds already lining the streets of London. Union Jack flags fluttered in the gentle breeze, and the distant sound of excited chatter reached his ears. He remembered his own childhood, watching similar ceremonies on television, never imagining that one day he would play such a central role in Britain's most sacred traditions. Kate joined him at the window, slipping her hand into his. They stood, in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts about the journey that had brought them to this moment. From their university days at St. Andrews to their fairy tale wedding, and now to this historic coronation, their lives had been a carefully choreographed dance between private moments and public duty. The head of royal protocol knocked gently on the door, announcing that their motorcade would be ready in 30 minutes. Kate squeezed William's hand once more before they separated to collect their children. The palace staff moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing exactly their role in ensuring the royal family's timely arrival at Westminster Abbey. George appeared first, walking with measured steps that his etiquette tutor had spent weeks perfecting. Charlotte followed, her eyes bright with excitement as she clutched a small bouquet that matched her mother's. Louis bounced slightly as he walked, his natural childhood energy barely contained by the formal atmosphere surrounding him. The family gathered in the palace's grand entrance hall, where photographers captured their final moments before departing. William looked at his children with immense pride, seeing in them the future of the monarchy. Kate adjusted Charlotte's hair ribbon one last time, her maternal instincts never fully switching off, even during the most formal occasions. Outside, the sound of horses' hooves on cobblestones announced the arrival of their ceremonial carriage. The ornate vehicle, polished to perfection, would carry them through the streets of London in full view of the cheering crowds. William helped Kate into the carriage first, then lifted each child to their designated seats. The children's eyes widened as they settled into the plush velvet interior, the reality of their special day finally beginning to sink in. As the carriage began to move, the family waved to the palace staff who had lined up to see them off. Many of these devoted employees had served the royal family for decades, and tears of emotion glistened in their eyes as they watched this historic moment unfold. The wheels of the carriage rolled smoothly over the palace grounds, carrying not just a family, but the hopes and traditions of an entire nation toward Westminster Abbey. The royal carriage rolled through the ornate gates of Kensington Palace and onto the bustling streets of London. Immediately, the atmosphere changed dramatically. Thousands of people lined both sides of the road, their cheers creating a thunderous wave of sound that followed the carriage's progress. Union Jack flags waved enthusiastically above the crowd, creating a sea of red, white, and blue that stretched as far as the eye could see. Prince Louis pressed his small face against the carriage window, his eyes wide with wonder at the spectacle unfolding before him. He had never seen so many people in one place, all of them calling out his family's names with genuine affection. Princess Charlotte sat perfectly upright, remembering her mother's instructions about proper posture, but her excitement was evident in the bright smile that never left her face. She waved gracefully to the crowd, already showing the natural charm that would serve her well in royal duties to come. Prince George, conscious of his role as the future king, maintained a more serious demeanor while still acknowledging the crowd's enthusiasm. His waves were measured and dignified, displaying a maturity that impressed both his parents and the observers who noted his composed behavior. William watched his eldest son with a mixture of pride and concern, recognizing the burden of expectation that already rested on such young shoulders. Kate kept one hand gently placed on Charlotte's back, a subtle reminder of proper positioning, while her other hand waved gracefully to the crowd. Her smile was genuine and warm, connecting with individual faces in the sea of people whenever possible. She had learned over the years that these personal moments of connection, even brief ones, meant everything to the people who had waited hours just to catch a glimpse of the royal family. The carriage moved at a deliberate pace, allowing ample time for photographs and for the crowd to fully experience this historic moment. Street vendors had set up early in the morning, selling commemorative items, and children sat perched on their parents' shoulders to get a better view. The atmosphere was festive and celebratory, with people from all walks of life united in their shared excitement for the day ahead. As they passed through different neighborhoods, the family observed the remarkable diversity of London's population, all coming together for this singular event. Elderly couples who had witnessed previous coronations stood alongside young families introducing their children to royal tradition for the first time. International visitors mixed with lifelong Londoners, creating a tapestry of humanity that reflected the modern Commonwealth. The Metropolitan Police had coordinated an impressive security operation, with officers positioned at regular intervals along the route. Their presence was reassuring but unobtrusive, allowing the celebration to continue without dampening the joyful atmosphere. Mounted police officers on horseback added to the ceremonial nature of the procession, their horses stepping proudly alongside the royal carriage. William pointed out various landmarks to his children as they passed, turning the journey into an impromptu geography lesson about their capital city. He showed them the historic buildings where important decisions about their kingdom were made, helping them understand their connection to the city and its people. Kate added her own observations, sharing stories about the different areas they traveled through and the communities that called them home. The children's initial nervousness had completely disappeared, replaced by genuine enjoyment of the experience. Louis even began to mimic his siblings' waving technique, though his enthusiasm sometimes resulted in more energetic gestures than royal protocol typically recommended. Charlotte giggled at her younger brother's exuberance while maintaining her own perfect composure. Television cameras positioned along the route captured every moment of their journey, broadcasting the images to viewers around the world. Royal commentators provided continuous narration, noting the family's relaxed demeanor and the obvious affection between the parents and children. The global audience was witnessing not just a formal procession, but an intimate glimpse into the modern British royal family. As Westminster Abbey came into view in the distance, its ancient spires reaching toward the sky, the family members each felt a shift in their emotions. The casual joy of the carriage ride would soon give way to the solemnity and grandeur of the coronation ceremony itself, but these precious moments of connection with the British people would remain with them long after the day had ended. The magnificent silhouette of Westminster Abbey grew larger as their carriage approached the final stretch of the journey. The ancient stones of the abbey seemed to absorb the morning light, giving the building an ethereal glow that spoke of the countless coronations, weddings, and state occasions it had witnessed over nearly 1,000 years of history. William felt a familiar tightness in his chest as he gazed upon the building where his own wedding to Kate had taken place more than a decade earlier. The crowds surrounding the abbey were even denser than those they had encountered along the route. People had camped overnight to secure the best viewing positions, and their patience was now being rewarded with an unobstructed view of the royal family's arrival. Professional photographers jostled for position alongside amateur enthusiasts, all hoping to capture the perfect image of this historic moment. Kate took a deep breath as she prepared herself for the transition from the relative privacy of the carriage to the intense public scrutiny that awaited them outside. She had experienced many high-profile events during her years as a working royal, But the significance of a coronation elevated everything to an entirely different level. Her hand instinctively moved to check that her hat was perfectly positioned, knowing that every angle would be analyzed by fashion experts and royal watchers around the globe. The children sensed the change in atmosphere as their parents became more focused and formal. Charlotte straightened her shoulders and clasped her hands in her lap, demonstrating the poise that her etiquette lessons had instilled in her. George's expression became more serious as he mentally prepared for his ceremonial role in the day's events. Even Louis, despite his young age, seemed to understand that something important was about to happen. The carriage came to a gentle stop at the Abbey's main entrance, where a red carpet stretched from the street to the massive wooden doors. Members of the clergy, dressed in their finest ceremonial robes, stood ready to welcome the royal family into this most sacred of spaces. The Archbishop of Canterbury, who would soon crown King Charles III, waited with a warm smile that conveyed both the solemnity and joy of the occasion. Royal protection officers stepped forward first, their trained eyes scanning the crowd and surroundings with professional efficiency. The choreography of their movements had been rehearsed countless times, ensuring that the family's exit from the carriage would proceed smoothly and safely. Every detail had been planned and executed with military precision, yet the goal was to make everything appear natural and effortless. William stepped down from the carriage first, his movements confident and measured. He turned immediately to assist Kate, offering his hand as she gracefully descended to the red carpet. Her cream-colored coat dress fell perfectly into place, and the subtle sparkle of her jewelry caught the light from the television cameras that were broadcasting this moment to millions of viewers worldwide. The children followed, with George taking his role as big brother seriously by helping Charlotte step down from the carriage. Louis needed a bit more assistance, but his infectious smile as his feet touched the red carpet delighted everyone who witnessed it. The family stood together for a moment, allowing the photographers to capture images that would appear in newspapers and history books for generations to come. The sound of the Abbey bells filled the air, their ancient bronze voices calling the faithful to witness this sacred ceremony. The bells had rung for coronations dating back centuries, and their familiar toll connected this modern celebration to the long chain of British monarchs who had been crowned within these walls. Tourists and locals alike stopped in their tracks throughout London to listen to the magnificent sound echoing across the city. Members of the international press provided running commentary in dozens of languages, describing every detail of the family's appearance and demeanor to their audiences. Back home, royal experts analyzed the children's behavior, Kate's fashion choices, and William's body language, interpreting every gesture for viewers who might not understand the nuances of British royal protocol. The family began their walk toward the Abbey entrance, their pace deliberate and dignified. Kate's hand rested lightly on Charlotte's shoulder, providing both guidance and comfort to her daughter. William walked alongside George, occasionally offering quiet words of encouragement that only his son could hear. Louis held tightly to his mother's other hand, his eyes wide as he took in the grandeur of the ancient building that towered above them. As they approached the massive doors of Westminster Abbey, each family member felt the weight of history settling upon their shoulders. They were about to enter a sacred space where kings and queens had been crowned for nearly 1,000 years, where their own family's destiny had been shaped across generations, and where the future of the British monarchy would be celebrated and blessed on this most extraordinary of days. The massive wooden doors of Westminster Abbey swung open with a ceremonial grandeur that took everyone's breath away. The interior of the ancient building was transformed into a vision of gold, purple, and crimson, with thousands of flowers arranged in elaborate displays that filled the air with their delicate fragrance. Sunlight streamed through the magnificent stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the stone floor and creating an atmosphere of divine beauty that seemed almost otherworldly. William felt a profound sense of connection to his ancestors as he stepped across the threshold where so many kings and queens had walked before him. The Abbey's soaring Gothic arches stretched high above their heads, and the intricate stonework told stories of craftsmen who had labored centuries ago to create this masterpiece of architecture. Every surface seemed to whisper with the echoes of history, from royal weddings to state funerals, from coronations to moments of national celebration and mourning. Kate's eyes adjusted to the softer light inside the abbey, and she was struck by the sea of distinguished faces that filled every available seat. World leaders, heads of state, members of the nobility, and representatives from across the Commonwealth had gathered to witness this historic moment. The carefully orchestrated seating arrangement reflected centuries of diplomatic protocol, with each guest positioned according to their relationship with the British Crown and their nation's place in the international community. The children walked with remarkable composure despite the overwhelming grandeur surrounding them. Charlotte's eyes were drawn to the elaborate floral arrangements that decorated the abbey's ancient columns, while George maintained his focus straight ahead, following his father's example of dignified bearing. Louis's natural curiosity was evident as his gaze wandered from the ornate ceiling to the colorful stained glass windows, trying to absorb every detail of this magical environment. The abbey's world-famous choir had positioned themselves in the traditional location, their voices having already filled the sacred space with hauntingly beautiful music that seemed to emanate from the very stones themselves. The organist's skilled hands drew majestic sounds from the instrument that had accompanied countless royal ceremonies, creating a musical backdrop that elevated the entire atmosphere to something approaching the divine. Distinguished guests rose from their seats as the royal family made their entrance, the rustling of formal clothing and whispered conversations, creating a subtle symphony of anticipation. Foreign dignitaries who had traveled thousands of miles to attend this ceremony watched with fascination as they witnessed British royal tradition at its most elaborate and meaningful. Many of them had never experienced anything quite like the pomp and circumstance that surrounded a British coronation. The family proceeded down the ancient nave, their footsteps echoing softly on stones that had been worn smooth by centuries of royal processions. Kate's heels clicked gently against the floor, creating a rhythm that seemed to match her steady heartbeat as she maintained perfect posture, despite the intensity of the moment. The train of her dress flowed gracefully behind her, adding to the sense of occasion and formality that permeated every aspect of the ceremony. William nodded respectfully to various guests as they passed, recognizing prime ministers, presidents, and monarchs from around the world who had come to honor his father's coronation. His military training served him well in maintaining his composure under such intense scrutiny, though the emotional significance of the day was evident in his thoughtful expression and the careful attention he paid to his children's comfort and behavior. The Archbishop of Canterbury stood ready at the altar, his ceremonial robes glowing in the light that filtered through the abbey's magnificent windows. Ancient artifacts that would play crucial roles in the coronation ceremony were displayed on the altar, each piece representing centuries of British history and tradition. The St. Edward's crown, the orb, and the scepter gleamed with precious metals and gems, their presence lending an air of mystique and power to the proceedings. Television cameras positioned throughout the abbey captured every moment for the global audience, but they did so with respectful discretion that honored the sacred nature of the space. Directors and cameramen had spent weeks planning their coverage to ensure that viewers around the world could share in this historic moment without disrupting the ceremony's spiritual significance or the participants' ability to focus on the profound meaning of the occasion. As the family reached their designated positions near the altar, each member felt the full weight of their roles in this ancient ceremony. They were not merely observers, but active participants in a ritual that connected them to 1,000 years of British history. The moment had arrived when they would witness the transformation of a prince into a king, and with it, their own roles within the monarchy would be forever changed and elevated. The royal family took their positions in the specially constructed seating area that afforded them the perfect view of the altar where the coronation would take place. William sat with the bearing of a future king, his posture straight and his expression reflecting both the gravity and joy of witnessing his father's transformation into the monarch. The weight of his own future responsibilities seemed to settle more heavily upon his shoulders with each passing moment, knowing that one day he would stand in that very spot to receive the crown himself. Kate positioned herself gracefully beside her husband, her hands folded elegantly in her lap as she surveyed the magnificent scene before them. Her years of experience at royal events had taught her how to remain perfectly composed, while still allowing her genuine emotions to show in her expression. She felt immensely proud to be witnessing this pivotal moment in British history, while also thinking about how this ceremony would shape her children's understanding of their roles and responsibilities within the royal family. The children settled into their seats with remarkable poise for their ages. George understood the significance of what he was witnessing perhaps better than his younger siblings, and his serious demeanor reflected his growing awareness of the destiny that awaited him as the future heir to the throne. Charlotte sat with perfect posture, occasionally glancing around at the distinguished guests and elaborate decorations, her natural curiosity balanced by her excellent training in royal etiquette. Prince Louis, though younger and more energetic than his siblings, seemed genuinely captivated by the pageantry surrounding him. The colorful robes of the clergy, the glittering ceremonial objects, and the soaring music of the choir combined to create a sensory experience that held his attention in a way that few events could manage. His parents were pleased to see him, so engaged and well-behaved during such an important and lengthy ceremony. The ceremony began with ancient prayers and readings that had been part of British coronations for centuries, their words carrying the weight of tradition and the hopes of generations. The Archbishop of Canterbury's voice resonated through the abbey with clear authority and deep reverence, reminding everyone present that they were witnessing not just a political transition, but a sacred covenant between the monarch and both God and the people he would serve. King Charles III moved through each part of the ceremony with dignity and grace, clearly moved by the significance of the moment while maintaining the composure expected of a sovereign. William watched his father, with a mixture of admiration and emotion, seeing in him not just the new king but the man who had prepared his entire life for this moment. The transformation from prince to king was both instantaneous and the culmination of decades of preparation and service. The moment of the actual crowning approached, and a hush fell over the entire abbey as the archbishop lifted the St. Edward's crown high above the king's head. The ancient crown, encrusted with precious gems and heavy with the weight of history, seemed to glow in the light streaming through the stained glass windows. Every person in the abbey understood that they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered and studied for generations to come. When the crown was finally placed upon King Charles III's head, the abbey erupted in the traditional cry of, "God, save the king." The sound seemed to shake the very foundations of the ancient building as nearly 2,000 voices joined in unison. William felt a profound emotional surge as he added his own voice to the chorus, officially acknowledging his father as the new monarch and accepting his own elevated position as heir to the throne. Kate's eyes glistened with tears of joy and pride as she watched her father-in-law complete his transformation into the king. She understood better than most the sacrifices and dedication required for royal service, and she felt honored to be part of a family so committed to serving their nation and the Commonwealth. Her own role as the future queen consort seemed to gain new clarity and purpose in that moment of witnessing the coronation ceremony. The children joined their voices to the celebration, though their understanding of the moment's significance varied according to their ages. George's "God Save the King" was spoken with full comprehension of what those words meant for his family and his future. Charlotte's voice rang clear and true, her musical training evident in her perfect pronunciation and timing. Louis's enthusiastic participation brought smiles to the faces of nearby guests who were charmed by his genuine excitement. The ceremony continued with additional prayers, the presentation of the orb and scepter, and the homage paid by various nobles and church officials. Each element of the ancient ritual served to reinforce the new king's authority, while also emphasizing his responsibilities to his people. The abbey's atmosphere remained charged with emotion and reverence, as everyone present recognized they were participating in one of the most significant events in modern British history. As the formal coronation ceremony neared its conclusion, the royal family prepared for the next phase of this historic day, knowing that their procession back through London streets would allow the British people to celebrate their new monarch and demonstrate their continued support for the institution of the monarchy in the 21st century. The magnificent ceremony reached its crescendo as the newly crowned King Charles III rose from the coronation chair, the ancient seat that had supported British monarchs for over 700 years. The weight of the St. Edward's crown upon His head was matched by the weight of responsibility now resting upon his shoulders, but his bearing remained regal and confident as he prepared to greet his people as their sovereign. The transformation was complete, and the man who had spent decades preparing for this moment had finally assumed the role he was born to fulfill. William felt a profound shift in his own identity as he watched his father complete the coronation. Ritual. He was no longer simply the son of the heir to the throne, but the son of the king himself, which elevated his own position and responsibilities within the monarchy to an entirely new level. The realization that he was now directly next in line for the crown brought with it both pride and a sense of awesome responsibility that would guide his actions for the rest of his life. The royal family began their ceremonial exit from Westminster Abbey, walking with measured steps back down the ancient nave as the choir's voices soared to the vaulted ceiling in a final burst of celebratory music. Kate held her head high with quiet dignity, knowing that millions of eyes around the world were watching their every movement and that their comportment in these moments would be remembered and analyzed for years to come. Her grace under pressure had been tested many times during her years as a working royal, but never quite like this. The children maintained their exemplary behavior as they processed through the abbey, their earlier nervousness having been replaced by a sense of accomplishment and pride in their family's achievement. George walked with the confidence of a young prince who had successfully completed his first major royal ceremony, while Charlotte's natural charm shone through her perfect posture and gentle smiles. Louis's earlier fidgeting had given way to fascination with the pageantry surrounding him, and his good behavior was noted approvingly by guests and observers alike. As they emerged from the Abbey into the bright London sunshine, the sound of cheering crowds immediately enveloped them like a warm embrace from the British people. The thousands of spectators who had waited patiently throughout the ceremony burst into enthusiastic celebration at their first glimpse of the newly crowned king and the royal family. Union Jack flags waved frantically above the crowd, creating a sea of patriotic color that stretched as far as the eye could see along the processional route. The family's return carriage journey would be different from their arrival, as they now traveled as the immediate family of the reigning monarch, rather than simply senior royals attending a ceremony. This subtle but significant change was reflected in the increased formality of their procession and the heightened excitement of the crowds who lined the streets to welcome their new king home to Buckingham Palace. King Charles III joined his family in the ceremonial carriage for the return journey, his presence adding an extra dimension of regality to their procession. The crown jewels that he now wore as of right rather than ceremony caught the afternoon sunlight and seemed to cast their own magical glow over the entire scene. William sat beside his father with visible pride, understanding that this carriage ride marked the beginning of a new era for their family and their nation. Kate engaged the children in quiet conversation during the journey, helping them process the extraordinary events they had just witnessed while maintaining the royal family's tradition of appearing relaxed and approachable to the public. Her natural warmth and maternal instincts served her well in managing the children's excitement and energy, while still allowing them to fully appreciate the historic significance of the day they had just experienced. The crowds along the return route seemed even more jubilant than those they had encountered earlier, as news of the successful coronation ceremony had spread throughout London and beyond. People of all ages and backgrounds had come together to celebrate this moment of national unity and continuity, demonstrating the enduring appeal of the monarchy as a symbol of British identity and values. As Buckingham Palace came into view at the end of the mall, its familiar facade decorated with ceremonial flags and bunting, the royal family prepared for the final element of their coronation day duties. The traditional balcony appearance would allow them to acknowledge the crowds gathered outside the palace and provide the perfect conclusion to a day that had begun before dawn and would be remembered for the rest of their lives. The carriage rolled through the palace gates as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the courtyard where palace staff had gathered to welcome home their newly crowned sovereign. The children's eyes were bright with excitement and exhaustion in equal measure, but their smiles remained genuine as they prepared for their final public appearance of this extraordinary coronation day. The day had transformed not just a prince into a king, but an entire family into the central figures of a modern monarchy that would guide Britain and the Commonwealth into the future, while honoring the ancient traditions that had brought them to this moment of triumph and celebration.